That's some music from the opera Fidelio by Beethoven. And I played that because the Manitoba Opera is in the midst of their performance of Beethoven's only opera, Fidelio. And one of the stars, one of the performer, is Lara Secord-Haid. She is a Winnipeg native and a graduate of Juilliard and Boston's New England Conservatory. This is one of her most recent performances here in Beethoven, but in the past season she's sung everything from Verdi's Requiem, The Messiah, as well as Ariadne of Naxos with the and other works of Manhattan Opera Studio and Manon with the New York Lyric Opera. And that's just the beginning, as it is just sort of early on in Lara's career. Good morning, Lara. She's in the studio with you this morning.
Good morning.
Welcome home. Welcome back to Winnipeg.
Thank you. Really nice to be here.
Thank you for coming in early in the morning. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
You're on your short break, I guess, from performing in Beethoven's Fidelio, so you've got a couple days to relax, visit family and friends, and let's talk a little bit about, I guess, you before we get into the opera. As I said earlier, I'm not going to no real personal hard-hitting questions here, especially at 8 in the morning, but tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to singing. I mean, we'd like to hear a bit about that.
Okay. My mother bought me a piano before I was born, so I've always had music in my life, and my dad was a big opera lover. He would listen to the broadcasts from the Metropolitan Opera every Saturday afternoon, and so I always had opera sort of around me, and I never really considered singing as a career. I wasn't in choirs as a child. I was never really encouraged into singing, but I always kind of thought I had a voice. I had this nagging suspicion that I did, and I liked the sound of it. So actually I had my bat mitzvah at the Sherry Zedek when I was 12, and the cantor there at the time and the rabbi were really excited about my voice and encouraged me. And
Rabbi Burkle.
Oh, no? At the time it was Rabbi Green, actually.
Green, okay.
Yeah. And so I got my first sort of encouragement, and I kind of ran with it. And having had opera, and both opera and jazz, be a big part of the music I heard at home and the things that I like to listen to on my own, I kind of pursued both. But opera was the one that kind of took hold.
When you say you pursued both, was it pursuing both in school, or was it just something as a pastime when you first started pursuing?
It was, extracurricular. My school didn't have a strong music program, so I studied jazz and went to jam sessions, and I studied, I kept studying piano, but I also studied voice with Diane Berger here in town, and took every opportunity. They always say, as a young singer, never refuse an opportunity to sing. It doesn't matter if it's your family asking you to get up during dinner and sing or whatever it is. So I never did, and it just kind of snowballed from there.
I won't ask you to sing just yet this morning.
No, please. You don't want to hear that.
You can refuse this opportunity. So why did opera win out over jazz and musicals, and what was it about opera that really stuck with you, that you really liked?
I find it so compelling. I find the dramas really, really compelling and interesting. The music continues to amaze me. I mean, I think I fall in love with it every time I see a new production or see an old favorite. It's hard to describe, but it's life on such a grand scale. It's art on such a grand scale. Wagner called it Gesamtkunstwerk. It's big and wonderful and exaggerated, and I love it.
Mm-hmm. You just spoke in German there, and that just kind of brought to mind, how easy is it to pick up all these different languages that you need to sing for opera? I mean, do you find that you learn a lot of the language, or do you learn specific things to get you through the opera? I mean, it's difficult and challenging.
Yeah. I personally try to learn as much of the language as possible. I think it's fun, and I think the more you know, the better, and then the more people that you can work with and meet them halfway, because everybody's willing to speak English, but it's a nice gesture to speak in somebody else's language. Mm-hmm. So I don't find it terribly challenging, but I quite like it. Like I I spend time on Rosetta Stone
Yes.
in my spare time. So, yeah.
So you went from here. You went right to Boston. To Boston after here to study at the New England Conservatory. How was that experience?
Boston's an amazing city. It was a fantastic school, and a school with a lot of different music programs. So there was a fantastic jazz program there, great orchestra program. There were bluegrass singers entering the jazz program, and one girl that I started with started as a classical violin major and then became a jazz violin major. It was a really beautiful collaborative environment, and some of the ensembles that got together in both the classical and jazz department there, I go hear them in New York all the time, and it brings back great memories. So NEC was an amazing place to start out. And
from there you went to Juilliard as well.
Right.
Juilliard is probably, when you think of the music schools, it's one of the most prestigious. And how does that compare to somewhere like Boston? I mean, what would be the difference, say, between the two? And
I would say in Boston, as is probably the case with a lot of undergrad programs, I mean, it might just have been the difference of program. I had a lot more time to myself, and I could just sort of mess around in a practice room with arias and play around and discover and all that. And Juilliard was a really rigorous training program. There just wasn't that time for me to do that. And we were always in rehearsal for a show, 3-week rehearsal periods, and then a couple weeks of putting up the show. And I found it very rigorous, and I value the experience like incredibly. But it wasn't so much that process of discovery that I had in undergrad. It was really putting yourself to the test and finding how you work in situations and working with new people every single day and just kind of jumping in and doing it.
Yeah, which I guess is sort of the reality when you hit the world out there. It's what it is. It is, right? Certainly. So amazing training, really. I'm in the studio with Lara Secord-Haid, and she's in town with the Manitoba Opera. It's her premiere with the Manitoba Opera, Beethoven's Fidelio. So tell us a little bit about what it's like to perform the role that you're playing, because it's a 16-year-old girl that you have to play. How do you approach something like that? Do you have to adjust your voice? Do you have to adjust what do you do to approach a character who is 16 years old?
Yeah, I haven't really played with the color of my voice. I think there's enough brightness in the sound to convey youth at this stage. Thank goodness. But yeah, physicality is a big piece of it. And sort of, because we have dialogue in this show, well, how would she say this? I know how I would say this, but how would she say this? And then the physicality of being 16, maybe crossing your legs is a little too mature. Maybe she would do something else. Or how would she walk? She's wearing heels. How would she do that? There's just a lot of questions to answer and a lot of experimenting to do in the rehearsal process. And I felt so blessed that we really had the time and the freedom to do that.
One of the things often when you hear it just on radio or you hear it on record, it's very different than seeing an opera live, because as you say, I mean, when you're listening to it just on a recording, all you hear is the voice. But when you're seeing an opera live, it's a performance, it's a theatrical performance, and that's an element of it that's very, as you say, very, very important. So you have obviously someone that works with you to help you, stage everything.
Oh yeah, director Larry DeRoche did, I think, just a bang-up job staging it. I find it very compelling what he's done with everything. And yeah, and I'm a big proponent of live music. I think there's no comparison. It's wonderful to be able to come home and sit down and turn on a record, but there is nothing like hearing music live.
And yourself, you still get out to see music live as often as you can when you have a chance?
As much as I can, yeah.
So right now, you mentioned off air, you're kind of making you're making a somewhat of a transition right now. You're thinking about perhaps getting back into the school setting again. You've been off for a couple years, and what's your plan for the next little while?
In December, I'll go to New York and take a few weeks of auditions and sort of see what comes of that. And the new year, I'll I'll do some more auditioning and probably some competitions. And I am using this time to prepare new repertoire, try new things, sort of see what are the boundaries of what I can do today.
Mm-hmm. How difficult is it out there for a soprano singer?
It's not easy.
Not easy.
There are lots of us, lots of sopranos in the business, and fewer opportunities every day, unfortunately, as companies are closing and everybody's downsizing. So
downsizing.
Yeah. Yeah, agencies are downsizing, opera companies are downsizing.
So where do you fall in terms of, there's the real classic stuff, the Beethoven, the Mozart, the Puccini, the Verdi, and then there's also newer classical music. Mm-hmm. Do you find yourself being compelled by some of the new contemporary music out there as well?
Very much so. Mm-hmm. Very much so. I've been fortunate to be able to kind of do it all so far, and I do hear myself in the new music, and I don't mind spending all the time it takes to learn crazy intervals and analyze new forms. So, yeah.
It's a challenge.
I like it all.
You like it all?
I do.
Well, if you haven't seen the opera yet, you still have another chance to see it. They're performing tomorrow night and Friday night. And it's the only opera that Beethoven wrote. And it's a very timely opera, sort of to do with human rights. And it's a wonderful performance that Manitoba Opera is doing. And I've been chatting with Lara Secord-Haid, who is Winnipeg born and still spends some time here in our fair city. And she is performing one of the main roles in it as well. So you get an opportunity to see her. I'm going to play you another little track from the Fidelio. And then we'll come back for a few more minutes of chat with Lara. Beethoven's Fidelio, one of the vocal pieces from Beethoven's Fidelio, and the Manitoba Opera is performing that tomorrow night and Friday night. Your last chance to see that. So still get tickets at their website, or go to our website classic107.com and we'll link you over. And I have in the studio with me one of the performers from Fidelio, Lara Secord-Haid, who's from Winnipeg, and she's happy to be back here. And Lara, just one sort of quick question about opera. Do you have any favorite operas?
Yeah. I do find whatever I'm working on is kind of my favorite opera. I really like the Verdi operas. La Traviata is a favorite of mine. I love A Midsummer Night's Dream by Benjamin Britten. There's just so much going on in there. It's so beautiful. The operas of Berg are really interesting, like Lulu and Wozzeck. Lots of favorites.
Lots of favorites, yeah, and the list goes on.
Yeah, the list goes on and on.
So what's up next for you after Beethoven?
Bit of an audition tour, and a couple projects in New York in March.
In March.
Yeah.
Well, best of luck.
Thank
Have
you.
fun, and thank you for coming in this morning and joining me. I know it's a little bit early for a lot of musicians. I won't say singers, because it's typically musicians are always like, wow, it's early. But, I'm always happy when someone can come and make it down, because I know it's not the easiest time of day for a lot of
pleasure.
people. So, and again, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's continue with music by Weber, Guy Few, and Adina Mackie Jackson.